Have you ever wondered what it would be like to feel steady and confident in your parenting? Do you ever think about how to truly savor these precious years with your growing people? And perhaps most importantly, do you dream of creating connected relationships that endure beyond childhood? I'm Carrie Conti, and I've spent the last 2 decades guiding, supporting, and inspiring parents to know and trust themselves deeply. And as a result, there are thousands of parents all over the world who feel skillfully equipped, personally fulfilled, and authentically connected with their people in all phases of development. Join me, along with my friend and collaborator, Kristen Manieri, as we explore what it means to not parent. Let's get untangling.
So, Carrie, moving deeper into that conversation that we had in the last episode about perspective, one of the things that really resonated with me is that when we sort of change the way we look at something, it really just changes our relationship with it. And one of the things I've noticed is that the conversation around technology, when we're not careful, can turn into this, like, this is when we can have technology and this is when we can't. Like, our life is like technology time and non-technology time. Right. And I think the trouble with that is that that's like a small conversation compared to the bigger conversation, the one that I'm really inspired about and really excited to have. And that is like, who are we as a family and what matters to us and how do we want to live and how do we want to be? And then maybe talk about, and where does technology fit into those things? So how do we start having a bigger conversation around our values and our priorities and our intentions that isn't so steeped in, but when will I get to use my phone, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that requires just little cracks, little moments where, you take a little leap into, so maybe you say, okay, on Sundays, we don't use technology from 3 to 4. Like, it could be that, like, it's like, let's run an experiment. And I'm a big proponent of keeping it teeny tiny so that you really wean it in. It's not about making some grand plan that really nobody's ready for. Nobody's ready to go there. But let's just try, finding these little moments where you like, hey, we're going to grandma's or something. All right, we're going to leave our phones at home. Like, let's see what happens. We don't know what that is yet. Like, the question that I would invite parents to be asking is, like, how can we as a family play with this? And it does require, in my opinion, pulling way back and asking, what does matter? And really asking each person in the family, even if they're little, what do you love? What is important to you? And they might say, my screens. It's like, okay, I hear that. Like, don't dismiss that, honor it, acknowledge it, and say, oh, wow, you know what? I hear that. And what I'm loving is going on walks with you in nature. And, oh, I love when we get to be with our family and we have our gatherings with the people that we love. And like, you can be the voice of it even for a while, because they might not value those things. But if it's not conveyed, if you're not speaking the language of it, actually saying the words, they might not know. And so that's, again, back to this idea of how can you be an influencer of the family? How can you say, oh, I've been really considering this, and this is what I value, and this is what we think is important, and we've talked about this, and let's talk about it with you because we're in relationships with you. I mean, that's the other piece of this is when you invite their honest opinion and you acknowledge whatever they share, it creates an environment where it is less top down and it doesn't feel as, well, this is when we get it because parents say so. And we're going to try to sneak around and do all the other stuff that, like, that doesn't, you can even name it. Like, that's not what we're going for here.
Yeah.
Here's what we are going for.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to have a little clarity of, like, we value having some time connected without our screens. That's something we value as a family, or we're trying to instill in this family. We value human to human experiences. So, when friends come over, here are our guidelines. This is how we're going to do it. like taking a stand and trying things on and not being inflexible, but coming with this spirit of like, let's be a family that does it our way. Like maybe that's the mantra is like, let's be a family who does it our way. And valuing that kind of creative, out of the box, like we're going to figure this out together. That kind of like camaraderie feels more, I think over time, it seeps in and it's like you're propagandizing in a way, like this is valuable to us. And when you don't do that, there's a lot of other people propagandizing their thing. And so being a bit of a louder, but with a heart open and in a spirit of excitement, not all the time, but when you can, of like, let's figure this out together. That's got a different feeling to me than not.
Well, what I think that it speaks to when you use the word camaraderie, it brought up the word belonging. And the family is our original belonging circle. And to be able to ask kids, whether they're 2 years old or 14, what's great about being in this family? Obviously, when we're all getting along, it'd probably be better to ask that question at that point. But I would be shocked if a kid couldn't come up with an answer of like, well, I love it when we're laughing, or I love it when we all cook together, or I love it when everybody's in a good mood, or whatever. And being able to have that be the North Star. Oh, so you love it when we're connected. Got it. I remember Allie and we had a great stint of going on hikes together on the weekends. And there was a time where she got into photography. And so I think she was like 11 at the time, or 12 maybe. And she wanted to bring her phone. And I think because of our work together, I was, all right, that sounds like a good experiment. Let's try it. Let's try you bringing your phone on the walk. In my head, I was like, wah, 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 no alarm, definitely not. Don't bring a phone. We're in nature. But I thought, you know what? I'm not going to stomp on it because she wants to take pictures and she really wants to do this. And then at the end of that walk, it was like, well, how was that? Like, did it feel like you couldn't relax? Did it feel like you always needed to be stopping and taking pictures? Let's try it next time without the phone. But It was this sense of like circling back to, why are we on the hike to begin with? We're hiking, we're connecting with ourselves, with each other, with nature. Does it make sense for the phone to fit into this moment in time with us? And I just think that there's so much more value in sort of widening the lens and asking like, what are we up to here? Like, what are we doing here? Yeah. What's happening here? Yeah. And does it make sense that the phone is involved in this interaction right now, or the video game or the iPad or whatever the thing is? So yeah.
Right. Huge. And sometimes it does. And what that sparks is this real awareness that in a way, you're really the nest. Like the home is the nest. And when a bird goes back to the nest, they're trying to rest, they're trying to resource, they're trying to, like take a break from the being on of finding food and doing the protecting and all of it. It's like, this might not be the best metaphor, but that's the feeling of like, all right, if this is the place where they can resource and really let down and be themselves, then how does technology fit into that, especially the technology where they're, observing, maybe not even interacting, but just observing other humans out there. And so this is, I'm really clear that this is not, I don't take an alarmist approach to any of this. This is more of a curious, like, let's see what could be played with that is connected to something that you're really going for, so that you have data that can influence what keeps happening. And so this idea of like we said, like being a family that like experimenting, like using that language, like saying, okay, let's experiment with this. It's maybe never going to happen again, but let's try it. The doing or the not doing of the phone. Like, let's really in some ways, taking that bigger, like confident stance in like, no, I am going to give you an opportunity. We are going to be a family that tries things outside of what the others are doing. Because I think that can be the place that can trip families a lot, is when the young person comes home and says, well, everybody, I have a friend and her 14-year-old, they're really boundaried about like the time on the phone. And there's just a lot of guidance that's happening. That's just how they approach their family life, the parents. And so we were going somewhere and this young person said, would you be open to me getting TikTok? And, the mom said, like, make your case. Give me some information about what's going on that you want to try that out, because it's been a firm no. And so he shared a little bit. Oh, my friends are on it and I want to be able to, be in on some of those conversations. Mm-hmm. And she really, kind of considered and was able to, really just listen, and then got really clear of like, yeah, no, that's just not going to be, I know you can still access it, but I'm going to say for my part in your unfolding, that doesn't seem like a good thing for me to allow you to do. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean it's a wrong thing. It's just their decision as parents, because she knew where she was with her partner in this. And so my point in that is, again, not to say right or wrong, but it's to show the person a level of like clarity and boundary of like, no, I'm still having to set some guidelines for you so that I'm not just throwing you out there to consume a bunch of stuff that I don't believe is what you need in this phase of your development. If you choose that later, that's on you. And right now, my job, just when you were a tiny little baby and I needed to keep you in my arms a lot of the time to hold you to know you were safe, this is one of those ways that I'm going to at least attempt to create a certain level of safety for you, even knowing that there's probably workarounds that you're going to figure out.
Mm. Well, and what I hear in what you're saying is intention, right? Is this idea that the parent is being reflective, is being contemplative, what do we value? And also being open. We're having conversations about it. It's not a top down. It's like what matters to each of us. One of the things that I've learned from you over the years is to like get ahead of things. So, all right, so we've got a family vacation coming up. There's going to be a road trip component to it. Let's set some intentions. Like, how do we want to be when we have an 8-hour drive in the car? Like maybe one movie, but maybe we listen to an audiobook. Maybe we just spend some time staring out the window. Okay, we've got summer coming up. We've got a holiday break, or, whatever it is. But it's like, the trouble is, I think we get so busy planning like which train we're going to be on and when the flight's going to land and which Airbnb are we going to stay in, and that we forget that this technology is coming with us and it has the potential to really rain on the whole parade if we're not careful. So I think part of technology in the family is getting ahead of things and having some family discussions. How do we want to be with technology on this blah, blah, blah at grandma's house or whatever, so that it isn't like you're, talking and looking over and being like, put that away. It's like, then you're not Sherpa anymore. Now you're technology police. And it's not, now it's like no one wants to be on vacation now, and it could go really bad really quickly.
Totally. And that's the point, is it really does just take a little bit of intention and consideration. So, I teach this process of like, okay, whether it's seasonal, like, oh, it's summer's coming up. Okay, that's a really different time of the year for families, like very different than other times of year when they're in school. So taking a little pause and just considering, it could take you 10 minutes. Like, what do we have going on? What are we going for? What are some of the experiences that we want to have? And you can do some of this on your own. I always encourage parents, like, first do it with you. And then if your partner's up for it, great, do that together and really have some conversations so you know where you each stand. And then open it up to the young people, but do it with internal clarity so that you're not necessarily holding it as like hard and fast, but you have some scaffolding of like, what are we going for here? So that in a way, by having that bit of scaffolding, you might be able to hear them a little differently. And they might say, well, unlimited. We want to have unlimited candy, unlimited time on the screens. Yeah. And if you've given it some consideration and you have a clear, like, yeah, that's not happening in you, you might be able to engage that with a little more humor and a little more levity than if you hadn't done that. Then when you do set out, like, all right, well, here's what we're doing. We're going to be aware of getting our, we're going to make sure we get our essentials. Like, what are the three things that we want to do each day that we know fuels and nourishes and resources us as humans? And then beyond that, we'll figure out like what lies beyond that. So to me, especially around the technology and especially around sort of like seasonal breaks where it can be a little bit more free form than you might like, I think talking more about the yeses and the things that feel like important, like, oh, we're going to do a family movie night once a week, or we're going to, play a board game on Fridays. Like, what are the yeses that you feel are investing in the relationship that you want to be having so that it trims a little bit of the loosey-goosey time where the screen does become sort of the go-to. And when you do actually get to that, you don't have that nagging feeling of like, oh, we didn't really do anything that checked our boxes as a family. So maybe you think of like, what's one thing a day? Oh, we're all going to sit down and at least have some part of a meal together. Like that feels Oh, why? Oh, because I want to feel like we're connecting. Oh, we're going to be outside for, at least 10 minutes a day. Like you can make it up, but doing it with an awareness of like, what is that really about? And doing more of like the crafting the yes and the ways you would like it to go so that, I was with you guys when your kids were young. And I remember, and I've seen this in so many families where you go out and you have this amazing fun little adventure of a day, and then everybody gets home and yeah, you're like, right, let's all just like chill out and watch a show or get on and have X amount of time. And what I see is parents kind of settle a little differently when they know other boxes have been checked, not just like, oh, now I'm like losing everything to these devices. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me in what you've just said is that noticing that we have, individual relationships with each of our kids and having to create individual sort of technology boundaries, rules, whatever. But in this conversation, what I'm really seeing is, and really acknowledging is like life is shifting. Our kids get older, they start new grades, they change developmentally, trends change, and that affects, their relationship to technology. But then we also have these shifts with seasons and holidays and times of year and all of that. And all of those have an impact on what's going on with technology. I mean, and to be able to me, the big thing is that our relationship to technology, how we are going to be with it for ourselves, for our kids, for our family, is not a one-stop shop. You don't pull in to get the tune-up and then done. I never have to look at this car again.
Right.
The big realization that I had, which had me really just surrender to technology a little bit more, was realizing like, oh yeah, I'm probably going to have to do this probably like at least once a month. Like once a month, we're going to have a conversation around technology again. And maybe it's because we're about to hit summer, or maybe because someone was allowed to get a new app and I'm watching you overuse it. Whatever it is, it's this realization is like, this is now a regular part of my life. It's now a regular part of my job. And I went through a mourning and then frustration phase of like, oh, I don't want this. I don't want this as a parent. And I'm through with that. This is just our monthly tune-up that we do. Where are we at with technology? What's coming up? Are we living how we want to live? Checking back into our values and priorities. To me, it's just a sense of like, okay, I can do this. Yeah. Like I find that confidence, confidence, as you said, in that awareness and almost that surrender.
I love that. That's where I got to. And that's why I'm offering this course. That's why I created this, because I feel like for sure I need to be doing a yearly like State of the Union,
Yes.
me and technology.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I really feel strongly about that. And I feel strongly that, like you're saying, at minimum once a year to check in and have a reboot of like, where are we? Who's where age wise? Like, what are people available for? What are people ready for? What do I need to slow down? What do I need to let go of? Like having that. So that's one of the reasons I'm offering this. Then creating some checkpoints, whether they're monthly or seasonally or weekly or even daily. That's another thing that I think is going to benefit you humans out there, myself included. And what I want to say to all of that is like, how freaking great that there's something drawing our focus this much that it gets us to be even more intentional with how we're living as individuals, how we're doing relationships with the people who mean the most to us, and how we're operating as families. Like, yay, technology.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, almost in the way that the pandemic, right? Like we didn't want it. We didn't ask for it. We resisted it. It was an awful intrusion. And yet, for many of us, it became the catalyst. It became a thruster to rethinking how we do our families. How do we spend our time? What have we been giving our time away to mindlessly? Where do we want to get really deliberate? I think to your point exactly, using technology rather than this thing that weighs us down and burdens us, seeing it as a catalyst for, intention and deliberateness and getting really clear and confident about who we are as a family. What a great perspective shift. So the course is 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's 4 weeks or 4 modules.
Yep.
And so you get on a Zoom with me. So we're using technology. Amazing. And I will teach, I'll practice the pause. Like we will settle, because that in itself is a game changer, as we all know. But having somebody guide you through a little like, all right, let's practice slowing ourselves down, not just talk about it, but do it. That's invaluable. Then I'll share a bit more concept, because I love that. And then we're going to get right to work doing actual, like sorting ourselves out and getting more clarity. And it's like shaking out the sheet that's been scrumpled up because we just keep hopping into bed without making the bed. It's like, it'll feel fresher and new no matter how much you examine what you're doing. So, it's really going to get you clear on where you are. It's going to give you more perspective and more of a sense of like, okay, what do we need to be thinking about and how do we need to be having these conversations? I mean, I have this list of questions that I'm encouraging my participants to print out, cut up, put in a little bowl on the kitchen table, and maybe once a dinner, every week or however often that it feels good, everybody pulls a question and the family discusses it. And so I'm going to guide you in having more intention and having more clarity and really operating with a spirit of like interesting, exciting, and like, oh, what's possible here, versus feeling in that like kind of scared, fearful, like, where is this going? And I don't feel like I have any sense of what my role is or how much control I need to assert. Like, let's just like bust through that, open up a trapdoor into possibility, and like get down to the business of creating some more ease and fun and like smoothness. Let's untangle this. That's all.
I love it. Well, and it sounds like it's like all of your courses that it's very workshoppy, like there's some concepts, but then there's also like, I'm going to get out my journal and I'm going to start sorting this out for myself. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Like each time you're going to leave more clear. I can guarantee that. Even if you just write one sentence, it's going to get you, you have it in there. I'm just preaching to the choir. I know how much you value the process of clarity writing and doing the journaling that we do. And even if it's not your thing, just dip a toe, because what you might hear from yourself that you think but you don't until you actually stop and get somebody to guide you through the process it's profound. It really is.
Well, and I think listening to this podcast, I know I can just speak for myself, is like, oh wow, I got some clarity. I got some, some things opened up for me, some perspective shifted. And now for me to now kind of workshop this and sit down and say, okay, so what are the things that actually matter to me? Like, we pointed to a lot of things that actually is going to take some time to reflect on and to unpack. And this course creates a container for that, like a time and a place. Okay, go be in this and do that for this amount of time and get this thing kind of sorted out for yourself. So yeah, I'm excited about it. I can't wait. I'm in. I'm going to be there.
Great.
So, yeah.
I love it. Okay, so that's beautiful. And I want to really tie it all together and go back to where we started with the podcast, Not Parenting in general, which is, I see this issue of technology, this topic, this invitation from this technological experience that we're all living in as a real form of parent development, that you're being asked to step up in a new way. And I'm going to guide you. Like, I'm all in. Like, let's go, because who you show up as around this is something that your kids are going to really, maybe not in the short term, but I almost can guarantee they're going to value if you take any little bit of awareness and share any little bit of your own clarity around this. You're going to be showing them something that is so unique. And even if they have great teachers, it's different because you're living life in a home with them. So let's go. Let's step up and take it.
I love it. So there's a link in the show notes of this episode and all 4 episodes on getting more information up to your website in general, but also to this course. And I just think it's going to be amazing, and I can't wait to do it. So I'm glad we got to kind of dip a toe in these 4 episodes and give people a taste of what is to come with this course and what's just possible when we shine kind of a loving light on just an area of life that just can get really tangly. So I feel just even a little bit untangled as a result of this conversation. So thank you. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you, because the conversation is just like, we get there. Like, I love when we do this, Kristen. So thank you.
Me too. All right. Well, I'll see you next time, whenever that is.
Okay.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Not Parenting. For any resources or offerings we spoke about in the episode, remember you can head to carrieconti.com or you can click on the links in the episode show notes. Thanks for being here.